I'm with New Hope Chapel of Plymouth. I also run a Celebrate Recovery program out of that church. And I'm a registered nurse at High Point Treatment Center in Plymouth. And today we're doing mental health training. So we have a guest speaker here, John Ryan. He works for the Department of Mental Health. So he's here to answer any questions that you might have. This is a very relaxed training, so we can just spread knowledge on mental illness, so anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, treatment options, and how to interact with the people that we serve. So I'm going to hand it over to John, and I'll be here for any questions as well.
Well, thank you. My name is John Ryan, and like I said, I want this to be a very interactive, informal conversation around the people and the guests we're trying to help serve. When I met, some of the backdrop, a little bit about me, and especially where we're recording, is I work for the Department of Mental Health. I'm part of the homeless outreach team. My area that I've been assigned to, and which by design, and which is my passion, is the Mass Gas area. I formerly worked at Pine Street as a homeless outreach person throughout the city. The other thing, I am also part-time employed in the shelter system, and I'm hoping we can talk a little bit about that, the questions that may come, the pros, the cons, the changes. I work very closely in this area. We have an initiative, it's a coalition of various agencies, nonprofits, the Mayor's Office of Housing, this and that. We're all in the last 2 years have worked towards finding solutions and basically breaking down barriers. For me, it was a surprise that a lot of times it's not the left hand and the right hand don't know what each other's doing, but it's like what are the the whole is greater than the sum of its parts kind of thing. So the knowledge that we gain. One thing I have to say, and this is an informal discussion, and while I work for these agencies, I do not speak for them. I'm going to share my opinions and experiences and some things I've learned along the way that I think to hope we can find some areas of discussion. First thing I would just ask, part of this spectrum is people come from different, and one of the reasons why I'm here, and I applaud you guys for being here, is I like being part of something I always hear sayings of, and until I got fully vested, I didn't quite understand, or it sounded cliche, but certainly it takes a village. It takes everything. So now that, and what does that consist of? I work for the state. I work with the city. There's various nonprofits that are funded, in the neighborhoods. There are faith-based groups like yourselves that all come out, and I've seen every single aspect as a necessary piece of the puzzle of being part of the journey. And the topics I would like to discuss, but I'm going to start with asking you all folks some questions. So I'd like to talk a little about real 101 on just what mental health and this concept of behavioral health and addiction and how how the two coincide at a real high level. And it's to what the experience, because I think the importance of it is, for me, is how really, and this, I think if I had an area of expertise, is in doing outreach with the guests and these challenging guests and meeting with them and trying to, the literal saying of meet them where they're at, but understand where they're at and understand the ultimate goal for me is them and how I can best help. Through the years of doing this, it is extremely rewarding. There's no two ways about it. That's part of why I do it. I have this saying, it sounds corny, but I've seen it come to fruition. I had a previous career in insurance. This is a second career. I used to work for the bottom line. Now I try to work for humankind, and I'm having moments of going home and saying, that really matters. A lot of times I jokingly say, I love what I do, too bad it's work. You know, I mean, that comes with a lot of what we all go through in work, you know, like, and a lot of it, it's not my way, we could do it better, how can the next one, you know, do it? But and maybe a few of you, someone can reach out, and especially with a Facebook group, one of the things I try to understand, and this is one of the tools I use, is with the guests and getting to know them, is rather than trying to come into a conversation and two things. This is, look, outreach out. It's not my perspective of them. To understand, let them speak their perspective of what's going on. So a few of you would like to just let me know, why do you do what you do here? And what are some of the hopes you have and goals in doing outreach of the Mass Cast community? Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Tanya, and I'm a recovering addict.
Mm-hmm.
I used and did everything that came with it for about 20-something years, and I wasn't able to raise my son. You know, I
Sure.
experienced jail and all the darkness.
The things that come with it.
I didn't know there was so much of that, you know, like it took me to a whole different level, like wow. I just kept saying, wow, you know, but now that what I'm trying to say is that throughout that whole journey, there were maybe 4 or 5 people in my midst that would pray for me or want to talk to me about God.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, now that I'm clean now, I got 11 years.
Congratulations, that's awesome.
But that's just to say that, in John 15:5, we the branch is vine, because without him we do nothing. And I tried. I went to every program, matter of fact, High Point was one of the first programs I went to when we first opened up employment. And the structure was good, the programs, you always had us doing something, and the food was awesome.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, High Point was one of the first programs I went to, and so I used to run from those people that used to want to talk. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
But I see that we can't do anything without God, and now that I'm a certified recovery coach as of 2015.
Congrats.
Mrs. Mitchell, who helped me with that. I want to be able to.
I think, and I don't, thank you for sharing that, and then
Yeah.
part of, a lot of it is our own personal experience. I'm comfortable sharing in my other thing, it's not about my role. I'm also in recovery, and that was a part of the experience of, and nor do I believe you need to be in this field. I hear a lot of it. I think it brings great perspective, but, I mean, we can touch on that. But I don't want to paraphrase, but I just wanted to, it sounded as though some of the things you said, in your path, in your journey, you have personal experience of something that helped you immensely, something you were kind of opposed to at a certain point.
Oh, yeah.
But these are just the key things, certain things you saw things, you experienced things firsthand, that, like, what's the thing, we all have our own bottoms per se, but it's never gonna be me, it's never gonna be me, because I think some of the questions of the why is the reality to try to bring these things back to Mass and Cast. we're at a level of humanity, we're in the midst, and we're seeing that level that is a borderline humanitarian crisis, and I believe all of us in this room, or otherwise we wouldn't be there, is we're trying to make a difference, and the question is how we can go about it. And I'm just going to use, if you don't mind, your example. So now the best thing to do is, I struggle with, like I said, we all have an open mind, is you use this term a couple times, and it's like you're social, like faith is the way, and I'm not disagreeing one iota. It's more about how can I plant, if that's the belief, how do we go around planting seeds to help people understand? Because I think everyone has a different level of recovery and a different pathway of recovery, but I'm going to use your example. How do we be careful not to, and you don't have to look past your own experience to not force them.
Right.
You know, that's all, it's like, you know.
I mean, those people didn't force it, you know, I mean.
So you're learning from what you learned, which
And
is something.
I wanna be able to, see if there's a way that we, that other people like me, and I, you know, do Bible studies, in programs, you know, not, you know, just 1 hour, and, you know, if they want to come, they can sign up. I just think we need more, or maybe a little bit more, you know, some spiritual recovery
Yeah.
classes.
And what I would
To
say,
connect with God, you know, if they believe.
and I'm gonna tie this in and then I'll ask another one. I think part of the reason is, and I was gonna applaud everyone, and I don't say this lightly, when I applaud everyone for showing up. You showed up, you're taking your time. I was recently so touched, one of the guests, well-known news article here, of one of the homeless guests who was struck and killed in a pedestrian, went to the services with the family, and I was so struck the amount of people that arrived from her family that, you know, and we always say in this thing, it's like in my work I say that's someone's sister, that's someone's mother, that's someone's this. I got to meet those someone, and I was amazed. She was basically separated from her family for years, but they took the time on any given day to show up, taking the time. So my answer to that is follow through with your passion of what you think you need more of, and either work with this church or other church, kind of build it, it will come. Try your best you can, because there are a lot of people that are faithful, that are looking for a place, you know, and so just try. Anyone else wanted to share, like why, or what brings you here, what motivates you, or how you're frustrated, how you're helping, what you want to see changed?
I just wanted to share a little bit
Oh,
about
sorry.
the Celebrate Recovery program.
Yeah.
So, you're right, there isn't a lot of Christ-centered programs out there. That's Celebrate Recovery is one of them. So I'll just read the card for you. Celebrate Recovery is for anyone of any background. You do not need to be a Christian to attend. Everyone is welcome, no matter your religious beliefs. We are a Christ-centered, 12-step, 8-principle recovery ministry. We are going to acknowledge God and His role in our recovery, but we do not require you to become a believer to attend and participate. Celebrate Recovery is for any kind of struggle in our lives. Less than a third of people who attend Celebrate Recovery struggle with substance abuse. Others come for anger, marriage, relationships, struggles, overeating, adult children, substances, you name it. Many come to find individuals who can relate to what they are struggling with when no one else understands. So this is one Christ-centered program that's out there. And Evelyn has been actually attending our Celebrate Recovery, and I believe that she has hopes to possibly in the future start one here. So I think that would be an amazing opportunity for you guys to even further this ministry. So I just wanted to share that with you guys, and if you ever want to come one in Plymouth. I have some cards here for you. Thank you.
Go ahead.
So I joined, or I started coming to Miracle Mile because I felt the Lord leading me to come. But even on in a non like Christian sense, like homelessness is stigmatized in our society, addiction is stigmatized, and so being in this environment, I'm here because I feel like the Lord wants to open my eyes to what people are struggling with. A lot of people are one bounced paycheck away from being homeless, so it's very possible that that could be anyone, but I think there's this idea that like, oh, that could never be me.
Mm-hmm.
So being in this environment every Saturday is like opening my eyes to the realities of what's going on, and we know that like even our government, like in some states, they're making it illegal to sleep on the streets, so now it's like, where are people gonna go? So I just I like being here because it keeps me connected to what's actually happening in the world, so that I can ask the Lord okay, how can I be used to be a blessing to people who are going through this? Because I myself am blessed to be to have housing, but you never know, life is crazy, so.
Is it Crystal? Thank you. That's lovely. Yeah, no, I mean, it gives us to be part of it. Is the same thing for me in my experience, in my journey, but what a lot of time, and it's not always about, and that will be a nice dovetailing into some of the things. I think it's important, at least for me, to, I was saying in a meeting, I'll know where I was during the mass cast tent, when it's all said and done. I'll know where I was in COVID when we had to open up a shelter to give human dignity and spacing for medical, I know I was around, and through COVID we saw what can get done, and also same thing to be part of something, to also see a little awareness of, you hear about things and cultural, and it's like, as much as I want to say, oh, I'm trying to gain cultural competence, when I see it and I see with my own eyes, what I could never understand, I give a simple example of, we hear about underserved communities and and all this, and it's real, and you went through, and this is just me, once again. I grew up in the suburbs, wasn't exposed to a lot of diversity. But anyway, I was driving through Nubian Square, and the other day, one of my guests is out there, and I'm looking, and what a rich community, and you go through, but I was like, man, and I'll just use one very simple example. There's a disproportionate folks still relying on check cashing stores, and that's just one simple example. One simple example, free bus rides in the mayor, I get it's the smallest to see and to help out and to fear. And the same thing, I think what's important is we come from a place of, we don't have to live in fear, but the realities of, if my circumstances change, there are a lot of circumstances that change, and the savings, there's a great book to read, Evicted, talks about how many families, one car break down and this and that, but a little bit of the differences in what we have in stability, there's probably a pathway we've built, whether through faith or mental health stability and other stability, is a framework of community, whether it's friends, families, and the journey. There's a chance, there's a journey, or you have enough of the capacities to just apply for programs. I say quite often, a lot of these programs out there, they're challenging. Like BHA is challenging, doing the apps, doing the this, doing the that, and not having a place to start. But I think from here, what I'll do, I appreciate both those things, is to talk a little bit about what my experience and what we see. And like I said, I'm going to try to keep it in the perspective of outreach, but starting in the general sense, what is DMH? DMH, it's a little Department of Mental Health in the state, my role within it is to help facilitate those clients that may be in need of the services. The little difference, mental health is out there in our private insurance and all this and all that. DMH sort of works on major mental health, meaning like, and it used to be old school, the difference between mental health, they would say, in this area, what makes it so challenging, is it an addiction problem? Is it a substance use disorder? Or is it a mental health disorder? And it takes time. You have to separate the one, the using, to have a period of where somebody is somewhat sober, to see how they act on their own, their baseline. Let's think of someone who's never, and we've all experienced someone in our life, no one that is using drugs, but they're off. You can, I don't, you know, the correct word, there's something not right, or they don't, no, I don't want to say not right, their presentation in society seems a little bit off, or norms, or they're talking to themselves. There's some characteristics that would describe, and what, like, something like schizophrenia, some things are just, and we're not going to get into any of this, all, like someone's going through life. I think schizophrenia is one of the most, I think it's cerebral, someone going through their life, and I've met them after the schizophrenia, and then you hear the history, you get to know them, and before that they were building computers, they were computer engineers, they had a life, I'll have a story where faith, and it said faith intercedes with, and there's no miracles that can't happen. Like I said, well, everything I give is with a caveat, you know. But I was dealing with someone who is now schizophrenic, his thinking is so much different. He's still a great human. I was able to finally, but what his illness, and a lot when they go unmedicated, he couldn't balance basic life challenges. To stay in an apartment, to pay the rent, to pay, you know, like the things that we do to hold a job. His mother was over in Russia, had no idea. She was so faith-based, but she truly believed, you know, it needed, his problem was he wasn't going to church. And I was like, not that that's not an issue, but I was just trying to have grace for everyone involved to say, let me what I can do from this end, you keep praying, and we'll hope, you know, somewhere. But the answer, that is an example, like, he may have drank because he was out on the street, this and that, but we were able to discern that's a major mental health issue. What they call is the proximate cause of the, there are others that you see, and I hate saying it like this, people that you talk and they're self-dialoguing, or they have their affect, what we say, like they're kind of talking to you, but not, you know, and then you just have an awareness of there's something not right. So my job in that instance is to, and I have a case like that, they are using, but it's not the proximate cause, but they still have choice, they're still found to be competent, they're in this area, they walked out of South Bay after 9 months, and there's nothing, you know. But in this example on mental health, there's someone with mental health, we're trying to help, but he still has the power of choice, and to try to move, it's a long path to move towards things like guardianship. And these are the things I didn't mean to get in, but it's not like we're not aware, because a lot of people will say, oh, there are people right out there, why aren't you doing more? And I don't care about that, we could always do more, you know, someone saying. But sometimes there are reasons out there that now you've educated a little bit, like, okay, this is a little bit more that we can do. Or why, with mental health, but pure mental health, and we have kind of group homes, we try to get them into different shelters for those, and I'm just talking about those if you can picture someone, no substance, you know, it's just something, the mechanisms of the mind are not clicking to a place, and as a society, I want to be part of a society that's trying to get them help. I have great frustrations within my own department that I'm not gonna go on as like, I think I'm very proactive and I get and I'm involved and I'm right on the ground level. And then sometimes the bureaucracy of various agencies sometimes slows and the barriers slow. I think with mental health, one of the big barriers is I think it's a growing, and there are a lot of programs out there, but unless they're actually getting to the guest, helping the guest, you know, like there's a lot of programs, we're big with acronyms, and I say at meetings, and I say half jokingly, half serious, I don't wanna hear about any of these acronyms in a futuristic sense. If your insurance provider provides behavioral health, make the referral, get them in front, like you don't need DMH to go to a case therapist. You don't need DMH to get mental health medicine to see a psychiatrist. But the wait lists are too long through private insurance or healthcare for the homeless. They're improving that. So, but there's a lot, and the other thing is let's just take mental health, and we hear it especially with youth and everyone and what we're all going through. Things that are tiered, the spectrum, you have the schizophrenia on this side. What of most of us? Anxiety, depression, you know, like just life on life's term things. Maybe a part of a chemical imbalance, you know, somewhere along the line, whether it was induced by long-term effects of substance abuse, you know, or because it takes the brain a while to heal. I think they say like 7 years, and I'm not all that. But there are those things that is prevalent. That is mental health, and that is the day in, day out. It's the pathway of how does someone get, for my field and for down here, most people, because of the ways and means to get more, the trauma of living on the street, all this, and the post-traumatic stress, there's generally a combination, and I'll weave into the addiction and the mental health that are affecting the folks down here. So I'm gonna keep this real simple. What are some of the feelings that we all go through? I went through myself in my journey. Feeling alone. I don't feel quite right. I never feel like I'm part of. So what are the first things most people do is self-medicate. You know, the journey of self-medication that I think leads to, okay, I'm getting a sense of relief. And that's why I'm starting to do it. The other issue that's important to note, and I did not know this, only through my own experience, why they say like the behavioral health aspect, it's not, and I apologize if I'm not looking over here, but how someone's substance use disorder is kind of rated, it's not the use of substances alone, it's the behaviors that go with it. If you can drink and you have no consequences, other than, which to a certain level, like you can think, it's not a disorder. If it's a disorder when you start, your health declined as a direct and proximate cause of your drink, which will happen, it all will happen. But if you're getting you're getting yourself into behaviorals that get you in contact with, say, law enforcement officials, whether it's substance, I think these are the things, it's the scale of, I used to say jokingly about myself at the end, and I can share more, but it had to be my journey and my path. I knew once I started drinking, and at the very end, this is at the very end, and then I started taking Xanax with it. It wasn't if something was gonna go wrong, it was when and to what degree, you know, and it was like, so I had the awareness around me, but the ability, it's about, and it's not that I'm starting, but with here, I'm just gonna give, this is a total opinion of mine, and this is not an excuse. I think some of the key factors for what you see here is over the years, it's the drug of choice. And people in my experience, when you get to know them, and especially in a sense of recovery, they'll share with you what their drug of choice was and why it might, like for me, I think my consequences didn't start till late, like 45 or something, 40 or something, I started using cocaine. I said, what could go wrong? But fast forward the whole story, and everything went wrong. But they, fast forward the story, I was looking for something because I had attention issues. You know, like, I'm not making an excuse, but I like, oh, isn't that ironic that I would. But I think here, there's so many factors that tie into mass cast, and it is whether the chicken or the egg, some level of mental health, and mental health can get worse, or you can progress to get better. But the most part, combining them with addiction, the greatest drug of choice was heroin until there was no heroin, until it became fentanyl. In my belief, one thing is understated as to the why people stay on the street and get on the street is the incredibly physically addictive nature of that drug. So I say to those people, and if that's why some need the miracle of the Faithway pathway, and those who can break that cycle, and especially without medical assisted treatment, it's such a lift. It is a miracle in and of itself, and wherever it comes from, God bless it, I'll take it. But what happens is the expense of it, and you get into the ways and the means to get more. And you see folks down here, and then I want to open up, is here, at least I have, like, the usage, it's like, what do you want to do, have conversations around recovery. A lot of folks are open to it. Don't be afraid to have the conversation. It's just how you present it. It's like, hey, do you think? I think most people there, when I meet a couple outreach things, is I talk to them like adults and say, and they'll speak to you and they'll tell you their may, and what's human nature. A lot of times, if you're in the stage of, it's not for me to judge, but if I think what looks like from the outside, they're in denial. No, I'm okay, I'm good. Go ahead, shoot.
I just want to shadow off that because you're a recovering addict also. So you heard of character defects.
Sure.
Now versus mental illness, yeah, I have anxiety and PTSD and all that. Yeah. But when I was using and everything hit me at once, like not being a mother, not being a daughter. I'm not there.
Sure.
I'm not being responsible. And I couldn't believe that I was there and I couldn't get back. And I almost got used to it, but I hated it. I wanted to get back, but I didn't know how.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now mental health. When I was a kid growing up, my mother didn't do drugs around us.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they did it when we were sleeping. But my mother and father didn't do anything where we would, see it and be like, oh, okay, I'm gonna do that when I grow up or something.
Yeah.
No, they didn't do that. So I'm not blaming my parents and stuff like that. It was a choice I made because I liked someone and they told me to try it.
Yeah.
Now mental illness, I met people, some of them, it started, when they were indulging with me, they would bring up stuff that happened to them when they were a kid. And I saw that character defect go from, hey, what's up? What are you doing? Things like that. No,
Yeah.
And then when they indulged in the drug, that brought it all out. I was just like, I couldn't get it in my eye, because they were angry. They were angry at stuff that things happened to them. And it stays with them. So I just want to know, does some of it come from when they were younger, or
This is what it's, everyone's unique in their own experience. And you bring up what I think is important, and I happen to be a believer of, it's once again, it's how it manifests itself at the end. There's a thing you're talking about, I believe we're all, like, let's take it on a more lighthearted note. I think we are all deeply affected by our parents' upbringing. And in any way, and I say this jokingly, but I always say, what brand of mayonnaise do you use? You know, like what type of thing? Were they part of a history in which you know, like, or do you ever have a moment with your siblings and someone says, thanks, Mom? Or they're you know, like you are now acting, you know, what we were taught. So that's, I think growing up has an effect on all of us. But the difference on a character defect is that gets into, and I don't know everyone's journey, is
But it makes us do things that we normally like, but, you know.
it's all, some people adjust as to the same thing. I think we were of the generation of, I've come to peace with that. My parents were doing the best they could with what they had. My mother didn't use drugs, but she clearly had mental health. You know, like, could I say how it affected me in one simple example? Did I have to go to school? Not if I didn't want to. You know, in hindsight, and then I have discipline, but I don't go the rest of my life blaming my lack of discipline. Like, you get to a point, but some illness progresses with age and torment, and some use to either calm the drugs, but yes, a simple answer is I believe, like, let's take meth. Meth, you can be of sane mind, smoke enough of it, you can have a drug-induced psychosis. You can get to a place that is not, when you see the folks here doing the like you see on the street here, the fentanyl, like their muscles are contracting. It took me, I'm like, what do you do, you know, with that? So also, so that kind of gets into two things, and maybe I'll just talk on the dual diagnosis part of, there's both, people can have both. They can have a mental health and a substance use disorder, and the correlation is, and that really means there's a direct correlation of both. It's kind of what you're explaining in a very simplistic way. It's like, okay, and this is so simplistic, but I need to get more. So the ways and means to get more, and we see this in males get trafficked, but in female trafficking, the horrors of what we see out there. Oh, the other thing, simplest definition of addiction, the using against your own will and continuing to use despite the consequences. You know, going in, putting yourself at a level of risk to get the heroin, to get the money, to get the heroin, you put yourself in harm's way because the need to get the drug in your system supersedes the fear of what would be kind of normal consequential thinking. Like, you know, we all have the things.
No matter what the consequences.
What's that?
No matter what the consequences.
No matter what the consequences. I always say it, I would never do that until I did it. You know? Like, okay, trust, I would never, and then I've lied about it for a long time now, just because of shame, you know? And that's a lot of, like, what was the old, you know, it was like, Whitney Houston, I only did powder cocaine.
Yeah, so, I just wanna, like.
Go ahead.
Just give you an example, true example.
Yeah,
This person was, you know, sexually abused.
yeah.
That stayed, and, how it led to her doing, my drug of choice was just crack. Heroin was not an interest to me. Crack already had a toll on me, big time. The way it made me chase it, that's a character defect. The way it made me act different, like, you know, I was always like, you know.
It's a psychological pull. I'll just go through what that is, a psychological pull, but the brain's a pretty strong thing.
And I was afraid that this one person would see me as, you know, they would go that far, you know, she was angry, you know, started crying and talking a little bit about it, you know. And I got the fact that it came from when she was, it had to be when she was a child,
Yeah.
she's defenseless.
And that's,
But it stuck with her, then boom, she's
it,
doing drugs.
and there's
and
no,
and-
no two ways, it
Yeah.
is a fact.
I mean, I got spankings,
It's-
right?
Yeah,
But, I mean, okay, I'm over it. When I was a
Right.
teenager, you know.
and I say this lighthearted, but you still talk
But
about
that
it.
makes me want to go and say, you know what? You know, I'm this, not
Yeah.
that person. I'm
Well,
gonna go
I
and-
think that's the thing, we all cope differently, but let's make no mistake, there is real trauma that comes out of childhood, and sexual abuse is something that takes years of everyone's independent journey, and I don't want, but it's real. What you need, you showed the awareness, so let's take it back to, if someone starts talking to you on instances like that, it's what's the difference between like empathy and sympathy? One, you've actually been there, the other you haven't, but you say, you're like, okay, I'm sorry, you know, like whatever the terms.
I'm not at that level on a mental, you know, like, some people snap, like you see on the news.
Yeah,
You see people who go, like, what about that guy who, in the post office? He went, they tried to take his taxes or something, or his pension. Remember that story of the postman? And he went in there, and, you know, he was so mad at that they took his pension, that he went and shot up the whole place. I mean, that's like a snap, crack, and pop.
yeah, and then that's the realities of, I'm not saying right, wrong, or different, there is definitely mental health, there's mental health breakdowns, there are combinations of those who are medicated, unmedicated, those are what we're facing, and here, to bring it back to here, is if you feel that if that wasn't your journey, but they were sharing something that you're sharing that might be someone else's journey, and if it helps, but that kind of goes back to, and what I say is to, I understand what level I'm at and not at, and I am not at a level in any way, shape, or form to, all I can do, the best thing I think I can do is validate or be there and listen. And it's to the level that people want to share, because I think tying it back into outreach and here and how we can help is plant a seed of hope. And to plant a seed of hope, the most basic and simplest tools that I have found. I connect with my guests and I often wonder why. And I jokingly say, oh, people just like to talk to me. But I know these are the things that I do. I treat as best I can as adults. I understand from my perspective a lot of, you will hear a lot, I will hear a lot of barriers to recovery pathways. One example I often hear far more often than not is what doesn't work. So I just listen and say, okay, I can see that, because I've been in those rooms, oh yeah. You're gonna get, and I go to these meetings and there's always someone, I go to this church group and there's always someone, yeah, all right. And then I just try to ask open-ended questions. But you have an interest, right? Because you mentioned, yeah. What works best for you? Have you had a time where you tried something and it really worked? Would you like to maybe revisit it? You went to High Point? Oh, I hear, and that's how the thing, I remember. Oh, High Point, I had a great, I was calling her and Jerry. I'm like, I have someone who's deaf. That's the term. And I was like, they had a good experience at High Point. You guys gotta find me a bag. Because there was a window of opportunity, and they did. They were gracious. It didn't work out. But these are the things that I wanted to convey. You had your hand up, sir?
Yeah, I keep thinking you're with the Department of Mental Health.
Yeah.
So is there anything the Department of Mental Health can do for an individual?
Absolutely. This is what, think of someone, I'll give you just a quick case study of things that do happen, have happened, and I see somebody out there. And also, generally, one of the things I can do is I get to know them, and I get their permission, so then I can say, have you ever had the help? So I can determine if they've had, because people just don't arrive. Everyone, we all have a history, and I think it's important to learn in a nice way as much as we can, because knowledge is power. Were they at DMH before? If so, what was the pathway? What happened? You know, like, or if they weren't, I can do an application. This is the level of care at DMH. Someone that I just described, to keep this simple, is higher level of the spectrum, fairly independent, this and that. They're found, does a review, medical records are reviewed, they're found to meet eligible
Okay,
requirements.
so, I'm sorry, I guess my question has to do logistically, can a person walk into a mental health facility and seek help?
Yeah, and that's the.
How does that work?
That's where, if you are struggling, like on a crisis basis, and you see someone, just like the emergency rooms have what we know medical, like what we would know to go in, if they are in crisis just like they were bleeding, you can first refer someone to the ED.
Yeah.
Okay? They have a psych department. Are they overwhelmed? Are they going through? So that's a great point. You're talking about acute issues. As I go on the street and I see someone in an acute issue and I get asked this question, why aren't you doing more? Why aren't you? There's a thing, are people here familiar with what a Section 12 is? Okay.
Is it mandated?
What's that?
Is it from mandated from court or from family?
Well, a Section 12 is more on the medical part. Like, I see someone in distress, I have to call 911. For Section 12, different people, a clinician, it is a mandate that they go with the police. There's all sorts of complications around this, but they go for a period, but it can be no longer than a couple days, and once they're stabilized, so this is what happens in practical. I know someone, I believe underneath they have mental health. They go to the hospital, I call the hospital, I'm like, please, 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 and I beg to no end. Keep them, they need help beyond.
But can anybody do that for another person, or?
You can call, these are the things to do. If you see someone you believe in
I mean, they don't have to be a relative, is what I'm saying. They don't have to be a mental
I'll get
health
into, that's a Section 35, okay?
Yes.
A Section 12, you see someone in medical distress, in need, you're driving by, call the police. They have community policing, I work closely with BPP Street Outreach that may know, or a 911 call, they can call EMS. There's a number, there's a thing called the BEST team. None of these systems are perfect, but these are systems you can call. But I would stick with the simplest one. If you seeing, it becomes tougher for me because I see so much. And I often say this, where the town that I live in, if I saw what I see on Mass and Cass every day, I'd be calling the police, the BEST team, and it's a different unfortunate. You come accustomed to what, and then you also understand it's not about they're not deserving, it's I've Section 12 them 1,000 times, or 100 times, and people say, well, they're right back on the street. I was like, well, that's, you know, go ahead.
Is that like the same thing as like a 72-hour hold at the hospital?
It is, but it's not quite for 72 hours. It's up to 72 hours. And every single day, they need to do another assessment to uphold it. So once people become medically stable, because that's the main thrust of going in, they get discharged, which means they're generally the fentanyl that's causing the psychomotor agitation has died down. They've also probably given a shot or something. I'm not saying it's not work, but it's not, they're not as, my point, my experience is people throw these around as remedies, not that they're not effective. Any given time, something might hold and is worthwhile, but it's no great panacea, because a lot of people like, and I'll just be a little hyper, well, why don't you just Section 35 more people? You know, and I'll get to that answer, but you have, and I'll get to you.
Yeah, so is there another team you can call? Because to my understanding, like realistically, in the news recently, a lot of people when they're having a mental health crisis have been murdered by the police when they were called, like a Section 12 is called. So is there another team that we can call other than the police that can escort them to the hospital? Yeah, so recently there was an autistic boy who was having something was happening mentally. The police were called and they killed him. So that happens pretty often. So is there another team we can call to assist these people to the hospital when they're having a mental crisis other than the police? So that, because they are trained in knowing how
Right, so you're
to,
saying the police aren't trained for it?
yeah, they're not trained for a mental health crisis. Is there a team that, like in the mental health department of Boston, who can?
There is,
come?
and I told Courtney I will, or I'll commit to coming back, it's in the flyer, there is, you could Google it, mental health. The problem becomes, there are numbers to reach out, like a hotline. You can just Google it and go to mass.gov. They've opened up, they've committed to have hotlines, just like what we know are so there is a mechanism, and then in distress, and if if those are the concerns, if there's a child, if you're able to take them to, a hospital if they're in a level of distress where they may hurt themselves, somebody else. But I'm gonna I know, and this is not, once again, I'm just putting out my experience, caveat. A lot of times, or if you have to, if you ask if they embedded or licensed clinicians that ride along with the different departments, everyone's experience. You go with your totality of your experience, but there are, you had the question, and then, go ahead.
Can I just say, there are police, depending on the town and so forth, that have clinicians that will accompany the police.
It explain, and the more information you give on the call is to explain that they're going through a mental health crisis, and so they, and then sometimes EMTs will come. All right. Oh, sorry.
Do we have like for our administrative do we have like, are there symptoms of knowing when a person is in a mental crisis? Like how do we determine that? To say, because you come across people in different,
We had one today,
Yeah.
but he was harmless.
Oh, no, I think you're talking about something different.
yeah, so for example, we may all have like, so for example, there are times where, when I've done a lot of youth work.
Yeah.
And people don't pay attention to certain things like similar to suicide, right? So there's certain words or emotions or things that people say or do that is a trigger for a person who's mentoring them or coaching them or working with them. So are there symptoms that we can pay attention to that's a trigger that says for us, or that's a flag that says this person is going through a mental crisis? We should call it. What is it?
I
Section
think
12?
this is my honest answer, and I don't know that you love it, but there are signs that what the symptoms of that you seem to be a well-spoken adult that's going out and doing it, a little bit of trust your instinct, but the key, like people can say, and it's not even, it goes beyond just the words, like a red flag would be, I want to kill myself. I want to, and then if someone says and I don't want to this is like where in the training, it's like I don't want to, this is what I do. There's a thing called mirroring conversations, which is a helpful tip on any conversation. You want to kill yourself, then they'll generally expand. Do they have a plan? Do they have a way to execute the plan? These are the three things. These are the red flags in general. But based on, it's such a challenge Because who wants to be the person that said, I could have helped and I didn't? But rarely does that happen. So you just have to go with your instinct and say, this person seems to be, if they're having an episode to hurt themselves, hurt somebody else, that's a more acute, you know, versus, and then the other things, and I don't want to get into, like, because it's not my place or my skill set to give training, but for me, what I look for is, and the other thing is, a lot of times, if you talk, say someone's self-dialoguing, they clearly have mental health. I know someone, he's using his things, but if they're somewhat calm and the thinking is somewhat linear, even though it doesn't make sense to you, you can understand what they're, you know, the logic behind what they're saying, then you're like, while sad, and you probably wish you could do something different, you know, it sometimes that's the course of action. I leave so many times, like, oh, I'm not sure. You throw in on outreach, cold weather situations, but I would just say, it doesn't help, but I would just say trust your instinct. There's gonna be a sense of, just like when you're gonna have a sense of safety, I hope you're all safe, and you know, you don't have to live by fear factors, but I hope you have a sense of kind of awareness around safety in doing outreach, around, you know, the circumstances, so.
I'm just curious, are you talking about experiences here at the breakfast?
Just in general.
Oh,
like,
general,
some
okay,
persons
no, I was,
with,
okay.
I don't have like a.
Okay, no, I thought you were talking about our breakfast, because I know you were talking.
Yeah, I'm referring to the breakfast and if sort of those who are on the street, like,
Because,
we're speaking to someone and there are those symptoms that we can be sensitive to.
well, I mean, what I think of is so many times we have people that are, you know, you're not sure if they're, could be overdosing because they're sleeping.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think there's quite a bit of that goes on downstairs. Okay.
Yep.
So that there is ways of, you know, what you do without startling them is you try to wake them. Okay, and you know, basically if they can't be woken, or you see if they're actually breathing, then they're okay. All right, they're just exhausted. I'm sure there's so many people that are exhausted there. But if it's more than that, then you need to get help.
I think,
If-
go ahead.
If that
Yeah.
makes sense to you. I mean,
No, it's not about what makes sense to me, it's, I think.
no, I just don't want to say anything that's not accurate, that's all.
So one of the first things that I notice with my patients before they go into like a real mental health crisis is you'll notice that sometimes they'll start pacing. They'll just start walking back and forth. Sometimes they'll be talking to themselves. Like I've had a patient, you know, punch things. I've had them throw things. So when they start to get like worked up, I would notice those small signs that before it gets worse or escalated, that's one of the first things I notice before they're at a severe mental health crisis, is they start to get agitated, restless, angry, you know, pacing, so.
And then on that, would it be fair to say too, is that, and part of the things that I find with that experience, is that when they're inside or when you have, or they're in a facility?
Yeah, this
or
is when like they're at my facility.
And that's, she's very smart and spot on. And then sometimes that leads to, I thought there'd be more questions onto the why. Sometimes, like, I'm just gonna give very general examples. I have a guest, it breaks my heart. Clearly, very, needs self-dialogue. He goes through, he does all those things, and he never gets to the next level, but he'll go inside one of the shelter, 112. And I asked, I said, isn't this ironic? Because some of the things we're doing, and I can share with you, are low threshold shelters. He would go in and I asked, I worked with this kind of renowned psychiatrist. I said, isn't that funny? The one place he'll go is probably the most, more noise and chaos and you would think that would be the last place. But sometimes they like to be around where their mind seems to feel, and he gets his rest, he comes outside, he goes through. But yeah, and on to the other thing is, all I can say is none of this is easy. All I try to do on your example is fail up. Every day I go through, I do carry Narcan, and I do carry one of these pulse things. I've been involved in reversing overdoses, but every time I debrief and say, what could I have done better? And I hate to say it, it's an experience. I haven't got it fully right. I went out, I ordered one of those pulse-on, first 5 times I never used it because right in the scene, and then I go back. Courtney and I were doing it, and we go through, and sometimes it takes 1 or 2 more people, and it's the perspective that you have. On the breathing thing, it is so challenging because, and even the Narcan, things to expect if you have. I had one nurse train me, and this is more where they're clearly breathing, all other factors aside. If they're clearly breathing, everything else is negotiable. Like they're check the risk factors, but it's a hard, I find it hard, and this is my profession, and this is what I do. It's hard to make a decision on the term to walk away, but I know some of the key points are how I think people can most, I don't think you'll ever feel good about it. You'll question yourself. It's a learning, at least for me. I'll just share my experience as a professional. I know I'm trying. My intent is in the right place. A lot of times I have to, especially on cold weather days, but there are a lot of the reasons, but what I can say is I think there's a beauty in simplicity and the fact someone just cares. Keep in mind, I always say this, and it's not a saying, never underestimate the importance of a 5-minute conversation. It might be the only one they have that day. Never underestimate the value of listening, and I was talking about, I don't like to call it a life hack, but it's a fact that I've learned through my career, but the term and looking up and like mirroring and having attentive listening is hearing what they're saying. Sometimes you just repeat back a few core words. I've learned a lot about deference, showing people deference and like respect, and allowing them to speak. I'm going to commit to coming to the breakfast because I like to see and to be around and to see more. But I know I was asking, part of the reasons I was asking community is in your approach to inviting people and to say there's a breakfast, how do you guys go about it? I'm just curious, different styles, like you walk up to someone, you see him, how does that kind of go? Yeah. You want one, then 2. We'll get the gentleman. You go first.
Okay, just quick question.
Yeah.
Someone without insurance or health insurance can get this type of help?
There's 2 things. In the occurring moment, DMH does not require citizenship, does not require, the health insurance is always a thing, but what I say is, there are social workers in hospitals. Say you have someone you need them to go to the hospital, have them go to the hospital. They're going to treat you for that moment, and then the rest. There shouldn't be. No, you have no insurance, you can't do. Or in the right thing. Mostly they'll go to try to find the insurance through Mass Health.
Okay.
But while it is, so I don't want to sound good.
So we do have people at High Point that don't have health insurance, and what we do is we help them get set up with it while they're in treatment.
Yeah, good, thank you.
You're welcome.
So,
Yeah, I got a lot of thoughts going through my head, but
shoot.
as a believer, I'm a former drunken addict myself, 24 years clean. But,
Congratulations.
yeah, but I heard you mention earlier in your talk, you said the power of choice. They have the power of choice. And you mentioned a little while ago, will, you know? But like, there's a guy that comes to the breakfast, and I've seen him around for about a year. Young guy, he's probably in his young 20s.
Mm-hmm.
But I've seen him go downhill in that year.
Sure.
And so I felt like a few weeks ago, I was supposed to tell him, I see you going downhill. You don't look good. Your
Yeah.
color isn't right. You're losing your teeth. He's gaunt.
Yeah.
And then I felt like a week later, I said to him, not to get down on him about drugs,
No,
I
no,
just
no,
said,
no,
it's
no.
really good to see you here,
Yeah.
you know? But you know, I said to him, do you ever wake up in the morning and say, I just don't want to do this anymore? And he said, every morning. So I, as a believer in Christ, I believe when you're in the bondage of drug addiction, right? Yes, there's mental health things that that can contribute to that. And I have a question at the end of this.
Yeah.
But I have a lot, these are thoughts.
Yeah,
that-
no, these are great.
You know,
And
I said, but his will is in a bondage. You know, as a believer, I believe the devil is out to steal, he's out to kill, he's out to destroy.
Okay.
And you know, if the goal is just to get people sober, they're still on their way to hell if they don't encounter Christ. You know, when this short life is over, when you take your last breath.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to see people encounter Christ, because as someone that I was having a drink years ago at a bar, and somebody put a business card on the bar next to me, and I'm half in the bag. I'm like,
Yeah.
what's this? Invitation to an AA meeting. And at the time, I got pissed. I was
Yeah.
like, who the heck gets invited to AA at a bar? I'm trying to have a drink here, you know?
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, that card went in my wallet.
Yeah.
And I held on to that thing for a couple of years, saying, I might need that someday, you know, so I'm thankful.
Yep.
But you know, for someone that's walking in addiction, and I've seen 4 people die in front of me over a massive cast, you know?
Yeah.
If it wasn't for Narcan, they'd still be dead.
Sure.
The last person I saw come to on about the 4th Narcan, she could have screamed in any horror movie, because it was a scream that came out of this young woman that will put the hair up in the back of your neck. And what I know about spiritual things, I look at it, she just saw the gates of hell. That's when she came back,
Okay.
you know? So there's a spiritual aspect to this, and we're coming up, you know, this is Palm Sunday tomorrow.
Yeah.
Next week, Christ rose from the dead. And as a Christian believer, if he didn't rise from the dead, we got no hope.
Right.
Humanity has no hope, right? So I'm saying all these thoughts I have. How do I encounter people was your last question. You just try to be a good listener. I heard you say that. Be a good listener. If you have a chance to say what happened in your life, I've had that chance. Some people just, and I prayed it this morning. When people walk in, we want them to encounter the presence of Christ as they walk in. You know, they're walking into the church is the people, but they're walking into a building where the church meets, you know? And so we want them to encounter the power of Christ. You know, when Jesus left this earth, he said, I'm going to send you a helper. They need the help of the Holy Spirit, because where the will is in your soul. The soul is made up of your mind, your will, your emotions. So if someone does have mental trouble, the power of Christ can heal someone's mind. They can heal those traumas. They can heal their soul, the past rapes, or whatever it is that bothers them. Their mind can be healed, the traumas to their emotions, their will. They can be empowered that this guy Mike, he wakes up every morning, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
But what's he doing? He's doing it.
Paul, 2 things though, what is important, and maybe when they said, I understand the things, thank you for, well, I think some of the key takeaways from your own things are what you mentioned. How do I go, what I heard from what your thought, which were great, how do I plant a seed that might make a difference?
Yep.
And you tell an anecdotal story. I had a similar anecdotal story, that the irony of it, when I was not understanding things, I had some woman talking to me at a bar, droning on, and my drinking buddy turned to me and said, I'd rather go to an AA meeting. And we laughed. Well, I spent a lot of times in AA meetings, so you never know. I think it's, when I say power of choice, maybe he was getting into legalities of, you know, if someone's viewed to be competent. I get addiction, I firmly believe it's the definition of insanity. I think I talked about I don't discount the physical pull, psychological pull, the spiritual chain that I went through, so I assume. But I think, and that's my biggest question, and I think it must be not a quandary, but the challenges of, and that's like was my leading, the kind of the leading question of how do you, what's that window of opportunity to interject your firm beliefs and the desire to help someone without pushing them away?
Yeah. Let me just finish my thoughts
Yeah,
and come up
no,
with a
no.
question. Is that, because I know I ramble on.
No.
But,
You've been quiet, you've been good.
Is that I want to see everyone encounter Christ. Because
Okay.
he is the answer. And if you go to AA, 6 of the 12 steps mentions to get a higher power. And I say, why mess around with a higher power when you can go to the power of the Most High? You know?
Yeah.
And so, so my question is, like, in someone that works in Department of Mental Health, I know there's an antichrist spirit in the world, right? So
Yeah.
people that are just dealing on the mental level, is there a resistance to spiritual things? Like someone like me, that I believe the only answer for these people is really the power of Jesus Christ, right? And so do you see, in your work, do you see a resistance to that? Or like, some people I can see that they would shut down. They don't want to hear anything about it. A lot of people are like, I'm all set. No, I don't, you know?
I think when you say it's a delicate answer, it's for me, and I think I asked the idea of being open-minded. And so I'm not shut down. If I was shut down, I wouldn't be here. I could fall behind.
No, I'm not asking you
No,
personally.
but I can only answer for
yours.
you getting into, and I'll be honest, and I think like what I said was genuine and honest, is I would just say, because I was trying to say, because I've had some experience that I do believe in the power of prayer. I think there can be more than one truth. I know I've been prayed over by people and felt uncomfortable in the setting and felt less than. You know, so I think there can be more than, the question becomes, how did you ask, it must be a challenge as to the why, God, please grant the grace that I'm hoping this person sees in their life. You know, like, I don't know how to put it. I'm not opposed to it there's clearly like the separation of state and church. You try to be, which isn't that there. So there's not, I always have an awareness, even, and I can ramble on to, in getting to know, I will be honest, and this is why, and if I didn't, and one of these things that I love about Courtney is I met her, and she's so faithful, and I said, and we did outreach together, and she talked, and I was like, I know I'm not that faithful as she is. But God, I wish I had some of it, but you know, but I know I'm practical. I know I show up. I remember one day I'm gonna have to get back with her. She said, oh, there are 3 simple things. And of course, I'm old with my memory. I'm like, what are those 3 simple things? But I'll get to you in 1 second. But it's just that what I try to use very affirming words to these people, to the folks, the guests, to say, you're deserving of it. I hope, you know. So my answer to those is like that have more faith than me, far more faith, for whatever reason. Just say it. Let's just keep it simple. You have to continue to pray for me and pray for yourselves, your strength. Then I believe you believe. That faith is so strong, you'll be able to interject the seed of hope.
One
Through
sentence.
the process.
Just-
Go ahead.
One sentence. I'm so glad I got it through my thick head, because people used to tell me God loved me. It went in this ear and out this ear. But I'm so glad that, you know, the most important thing I can say to people is that God loves you. He really, really cares. He cares about it. And it's, you know, I've come to the place where I don't believe truth is a plural word. I believe when Jesus said he was the truth, that's it. Not a plural. But, you know, but it's the love of God that can change people's hearts, their minds, their emotions. It's the love. When they get that love into their head. Because I used to believe the grace of God was for everybody. The love of God was for everybody. I couldn't believe it for myself, you know? But to get that across to people, how much God loves and cares about you. He cares every little detail of your life. That's what makes all the difference.
Yeah.
You know what, and I agree.
Oh, sorry, Will, go,
Real-
then
real-
there.
Real quick, I agree with him on the, you know, because, what I did was, throughout my journey, I, like, when I call myself doing it on my own strength, like, I'll go to detox, I'll feel good, I'll go to the program, and then it's like, on my way to the program, or when I got out of jail, that concrete, that atmosphere was calling me, you know, but while I was trying to get it together on my own, you know, before I read John 15:5, without him we could do nothing, right? That's when I started praying in the midst of all of it. Like, in the midst of it. Like, when I was in jail, when I was in the program, before I go to bed, I would pray, God, take this, you know, I don't wanna do this anymore, you know, and I'm good for what I'm going to do. And then as soon as so we can't do it on our own. That's where I'm at. We can't. And I didn't even know it was in the Word, in the Bible. You know, and he says, if you know, you can't do it on your own. Be the branch of the vine, and if you seek him with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, he will be found by you. I know, for me, God has gave me a new life. Okay, 11 years to me is like, I'm still like, whoa, okay? Because I was out there, I was prostituting, I was drugging, I did it all. And I have to admit, when I did get on my knees, I was crying. Because I felt it. I felt that negative spirit. And I said, Lord, please, do something. You know, do something. And I froze, you know. I froze because I was like, you know, I was gone. But, however, there was a guy today, I don't know the difference between like severe mental health or, you know, like the guy, there was a guy there today, he was harmless, but I knew he had a mental, if you guys were there, he was mentally, something was going on, but, you know, he was annoying, okay, we all do that.
Yep.
But I knew he had a mental problem, so, you know, you know, I knew, you know, I was like, oh my God, this is like, you know, calm down. I said that to myself, you know, calm down. I wonder if there's anything I can do to calm down. But I didn't want to because he went from, okay, praise God, and he was God mode, the spirit was there, and then the devil was like, you know, let me get you back over here on this side type of thing. So I saw that difference, you know.
Only thing I will say with both of you, and it's not about what I love about it, is my open mind. I don't disagree.
No,
But I believe,
you have to-
what I'm trying to say, which may resonate with someone else,
You
this
have to-
fervor
you have
and
to.
belief that I believe that you believe.
Right, but see,
Could
I
plan.
can't make anybody believe, you know what I mean? Because even, you know.
But that hope
it took
resonates.
me-
I do want
It
to
took
be
me to
able.
the age of 45 to actually, you know, I started at 21. Okay, I couldn't even raise my son. My son was 4 when I left him.
Yeah.
I left everyone. And I was out there every day, all day, throughout that whole time till I was 45, until I got on my knees and said, Lord, help me. And I didn't know when, I didn't know if he heard me. I didn't know nothing. And I went to church. I just didn't know. what I
And
knew
now you get a chance to pay
You
it
know what I
forward.
mean? So, you know, that's why it's important for me to dedicate my life to try to get it into programs, you know, just for an hour.
And I think too on that note,
Like a
yeah,
spiritual group.
and on that note, we talked, I do really want to share time though. I'm gonna get into
Yeah,
that.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just thinking that for us to remember, first that as we are speaking to people, our world, we tend to separate spirituality from who we are every day. And there's a lot of people that's moving in the place of understanding that you can't really separate spirit from yourself, you know, because we're spiritual. But I think Jesus and the apostles did an extraordinary job with demonstrating to us in the Gospels of how to be with people and to reach people spiritually from their context, whether it was agriculture or, you know, really sort of like speaking to them about the kingdom and about who they are, who they were created to be, and is this the will of the Father for you? You were created to be a king and a priest on the earth. Do you, in walking with authority and being an intercessor, but what you've accepted is a lie about who you are as a person. And so there's different ways to approach it to reach, to really speak to identity and spirituality. So I just want to present that as like, sometimes we wrestle with language or how to sort of speak about who we are spiritually, but at the end of the day, they know more so than anyone that they're struggling. That is a spiritual wrestle that's with them,
Oh, yeah, there's
Yeah.
I say, and I just not to try to make it simpler, but there's the target market. There's very much those that have the extreme beliefs as well. Not everyone needs to be converted. Some are there. It's just the practicality of the life and the lifestyle. And I'll just stick to that they will, I believe, my belief is that they will believe that someone cares, they're trying their pathway. You guys don't have to look past a lot of your own experiences for any past resistance for whatever reason to go through. So I applaud all of you. And back there,
you asked earlier why we come here, or like what's the reason why we volunteer here. And for me, I know that you asked this a while ago, but
no, that's a great way maybe as we start wrapping it down.
so for me, the reason I volunteer here is because I definitely see and feel God's love here, and I definitely that's what resonates with me. So that's the reason why I personally serve.
And that's wonderful, and God bless you and everyone for taking the time, because there is, I believe, I'm a firm believer in action steps, like in walking through and in walking in my community. I want to help those of us, whatever, that may, be struggling. So I think it's incredible. Sir.
Yeah, I was just thinking of your question about when we are outreaching to people and trying to encourage them to come to the breakfast. So I've been involved in that part of the process. And a lot of people know about the breakfast at this point. And so it's more like just a reminder to people that like, oh, it's Saturday morning, it's time for the breakfast. So we'll kind of walk through and talk with people, and sometimes
Now,
we'll
is
talk
it every
longer.
Saturday or once a month?
Yes.
Every Saturday,
Every
yeah.
Saturday. Yeah, no,
13
that's
years. Every Saturday for 13 years.
yeah.
So we'll walk through and we'll share with people that way and that sort of thing.
And the other thing, the reason why I was asking is, it's like I saw this thing, it's about, our guests are very smart, they're very knowledgeable on the where to get the food, and I think it's if the thought was, and you guys are showing more in depth and it's not, I believe, just like any sense of any given day, those who feel comfortable to come in the doors, there's a sense of community, what you're really kind of selling, and this is going to lead to the hope and maybe some of the results that you see. There's a sense, this is the reality of, for a lot, it's a nice sit-down breakfast, and there's hope, and there's something in there that other than there's food abound, I'm not saying, but a chance to a nice sit down. I cannot tell you. And I went to this recovery, and I've been in recovery, and the greatest part around it was the sense of kind of community, sitting at a table and going through and talking. And then the last thing I'm going to get right to you is, a lot of times, all that we try, I have to let go of control. I have to believe that there's a potential of making a slight difference, because that's where because I don't know, I could say, oh, I used to get into this, I housed this one, I housed that. I don't know what I've done or haven't done, but I know I try to be there consistent, regularly, and that's what folks are looking for. So I don't mean to speak for what I like to see in the folks that are helping our community, is that this genuine caring and whatever, or the grace that was showed with a guest that was struggling a little bit this morning, you know? Maybe that's the one moment they're not getting roused, they're not getting, you know. Hi.
I believe as a child of God that alcoholism and drug addiction, they're spirits.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe people can be delivered from them.
Mm-hmm.
I believe they can be set free.
Mm-hmm.
I had a friend, she came here to the program, and her husband from a young man, he was an alcoholic. And she moved from here in Boston. She used to come to the breakfast. She moved from here in Boston, and she moved to Worcester.
Okay.
She and the husband.
Worcester, yeah, okay.
And one day she called me and she was so excited. She said, guess what, Jane? My husband went in the fridge and threw away all the booze. He said, you don't want it anymore. And she said to me, Jane, if you see this man, you won't believe he was the same man. And I believe people can get delivered.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people, they think, well, you know, I just take a social drink.
Yeah.
But when you take that social drink, you get hooked.
Yeah.
You get hooked on it.
Okay.
And I believe that chain, it could be broken.
Yeah.
They go
Think we
through
have
programs, even sometimes they go through a lot of programs. But I don't know a whole lot about the programs, you know. But I believe, as a child of God, that spirit can be broken off them. If they call upon God for help.
Sure.
He
Sure.
can-
I mean, I believe that I'm not against anything, and I'm not defending. We've seen it. We have witnesses in this room that, but I think too, a little bit of, I know if that what is it, paradoxal, when you're of service, you give, you gain more, but you're not trying to, you can't give for that reason, and you know, it's like, oh, am I giving, you know. So I do believe it, we've seen evidence of it, but I, like someone said earlier too, I'm understanding from my own journey, I'm going through a journey, this is part and parcel of, I believe at the end of the day, if I'm trying harder to help than hurt, I'll take it as best I can, so.
Real quick, I just heard somebody say yesterday that the amount of people that die in one day from overdose is the amount of what would be on a 737 jet, right? Every day, a 737 crash into the ground.
Mm-hmm.
That would make the news and people would be appalled.
Mm-hmm.
But it's become part of our society.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's so sad. And I saw a guy one time, he needed a fix bad. And the look on his face as his whole body was there shaking.
Mm-hmm.
It looked like he was in hell to me, you know?
Yeah.
So God bless you and the work you do and the mental health people, all the efforts to try to get people. I want to see their wills empowered, that they can get their will back. Because some of them, the devil has stolen their will from them. They want to get clean,
Sure.
but their will doesn't have the power to get clean, you know? And so God bless all the efforts. I mean, whether it's people that believe in Christ, I want to see people get clean and come to their right minds and get clean, because it's an epidemic right now. There's people's mothers, their brothers, their sisters,
Sure.
they're dying. And I've seen so many sad sights out here, you know? And now they got this new thing, Trank, that they're mixing stuff with.
Yeah.
That doesn't respond to Narcan.
Yeah.
And it causes open sores, and it's godly, awful sores all over their body. And I think the devil just sits back and laughs, you know?
And I think, yeah, no, I mean, we see, and you have to be, I have to be conscious of it in my career where I see so much of it. I don't know what effect, but there's also too, to kind of tie it into just all of our journeys. There's if the substances were the problem, like, also you had mentioned a few things, but also I want grace and contentment as best I can have. in my life. It's not about, it's where I can find to sit back and be at a place in any given day. And I think one of the ways I try to do this, and I don't know why the answer is, I can think of a lot of reasons. This is one of the reasons I'm very, when I see people like Courtney so involved, and it was from a guest. I don't believe in coincidences. I helped a guest whose mother, she said, you may hear from a nurse who called me within 10 minutes of, and I kept saying, yeah, I'll give it a go. That's not my thing, but it takes a community, come on. And then she invited me to some, I was, okay. And I don't do too much, but I got to see it, and I do appreciate, and I think it's, no matter where we come from, what views, I think community is important. And like today, just on a very simple note, I was nervous, I was anxious, I have my second job I go to, I'm pretty tired, I think, when I'm looking for, like Grace, but I said, just keep saying yes and show up to these things, and I'm part of, my hope at the end of the day, that I showed what I asked of others, open-mindedness. It's not, I do it, I hope folks, I was nervous, it wouldn't go over well, or the thoughts, I can't control that, but I know I was honest. I just try to share my feelings and experiences, and if it helped move the needle just a little bit, then you don't need to tell me, I'll be content. But I know I'll feel energized going to my job this afternoon. I know it's the moments that matter, it's the people we meet along the journey, and I can, so thank you, folks.
We got to do it now.
I didn't order any.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a little.
And I'll try to be around more too, so. And then you could always go through if anyone needs to talk to me individually or like the number.